The group of people that I work with at work got a got a national award. We're going to Washington D.C. to collect our award. It's going to be a road trip. We're going on a road trip to Washington D.C. Look at that. First and foremost, I would like to thank our U.S. Congressman in Houston, Lieutenant Commander Dan Crenshaw. His office learned that we were coming to Houston, and he and his staff bent over backwards to ensure that we had a good time. Our tour started at the White House. We had special in-house tours. We had to get security checks a couple weeks in advance. There's no video inside the White House, so there's nothing but still photography. George Washington is prominently displayed all through the White House. This is a typical hallway. There are photos all over the place. Elvis is on the top left there. We've got Gerald Ford and his dog on the bottom left. Sheep in the White House. Many statues of former presidents such as Abraham Lincoln here. Statues and artworks that's been donated to the White House. Another typical room or typical view from within inside the White House right here. We saw things like the Vermont room. We saw the library for the White House. The China room. Outside, a view from outside looking at Lafayette Park. The East Room of the White House. One of the many fireplaces from the old White House from the early 1800s. A statue of Christopher Columbus. The Red Room. I have no clue why they call it the Red Room. State Dining Room. The hallway into the president's, or the entrance into the president's quarters. More George Washington. Official portraits of most of the presidents that I couldn't recognize all of them. Here's Ronald Reagan. Of course, no, just kidding. That's Ronald Reagan's one of my favorite presidents. There's his official portrait along with Nancy's. Got the little George Washington coming up here. That's his official portrait. Woodrow Wilson. John F. Kennedy. Bill Clinton. George W. and Laura Bush. I'm from Texas, so George and Laura are good to us. A view outside of Lafayette Park again. This is the actual front entrance to the White House. I don't know who that guy is. A view of the Washington Monument from the White House. We saw President Trump board his Marine One while we were there. We got the view through the window and then got to see Marine One leaving the compound. Ended up swapping coins. Got a couple coins from the officers working there at the White House. They were very generous. Our next stop was at the U.S. Capitol. Dan Crenshaw's staff, one of their staff members, personally toured us through the Capitol. This is a statue of Miss Freedom on the Lady Freedom on top of the Capitol. I did not know this, but the Supreme Court was once inside the Capitol building itself. This is the old Supreme Court rooms right here where the courts were argued at, or cases were argued at. There are many domes inside of the Capitol. This is one of the domes. Each state is allowed to put two statues of prominent people inside of the Capitol building. Some of the many people are. Virginia has Robert E. Lee. That was kind of surprised me that he would be there. Samuel Adams. They actually don't know what Samuel Adams looks like. They don't have any pictures of him. This is a man that's responsible for us not speaking Confederate more than anybody else. Colorado has the astronaut. This is the center of Washington, D.C., and it is at the center of the Capitol. This is a main rotunda, just George Washington at the bottom of the picture there. Some of the paintings on the inside of the rotunda, including Thomas Jefferson standing on Benjamin Franklin's foot during the signing of the Declaration of Independence. Nancy Pelosi's room. Sam Houston. And I was talking a little bit fast there. This is a hall of statues here. Most of these statues are from, like I say, each individual state can have 2 statues, and they pick who they want to have the statues of in the White House. I don't know how many of these I actually recognize, but it was pretty amazing. It's a nice place. So you look up, and there's the rotunda, the top of that there. This next spot is where Abraham Lincoln's desk was when he was a U.S. representative in the Capitol. A view of the Supreme Court from the Capitol, and a view of the Washington Monument from the Capitol. Then once we walk out the Capitol, this is a view from the National Mall. The next day, we start out with breakfast at Lincoln Waffle Shop across from Ford's Theater. This is where Abraham Lincoln was shot, and across the street is the building where Abraham Lincoln actually died at. Our next stop was we took a walk down the National Mall. There's the Washington Monument with a big fire behind it, a view of the White House from the Washington Monument. And then our next stop is at the World War II Memorial. This is a large memorial. It's on the National Mall between the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Memorial. To the right is labeled Pacific Theater. To the left is labeled the excuse me, I got it backwards. To the right is Atlantic Theater. To the left is the Pacific Theater. And if we do a 180-degree turn, you will actually come up and see how far away we are from the Washington Monument. This is the inscriptions for the World War II Memorial. There's a flagpole next to it, and on the bottom of the flagpole, it says, I'll read it as we walk by, Americans came to liberate, not to conquer, to restore freedom, and to end tyranny. And then the actual flagpole has each branch of service. There's the Texas pole along with my lovely wife, and there is the view of the Lincoln Memorial from the World War II Memorial. This is the Nurses Memorial here, the Vietnam Nurses Memorial. Took particular interest to that because the gorgeous lady standing there next to it is my wife, who is a nurse. The next stop is the Vietnam Memorial. It is a very sobering memorial, and you see that the tens, not the hundreds, not the thousands, but the tens of thousands of names on this wall, and each one of those names represent a life lost in Vietnam. My wife's uncle Robert had a friend named Ben Zamudio, and we found him on the wall. The next stop is the Lincoln Memorial on the far end of the National Mall. Yeah, there's the water there where Forrest Gump and Jenny went swimming. Then turn around here. This is the actual Lincoln Memorial. Inside we find Abe Lincoln. On the walls on the inside are the Gettysburg Address. And then if we make a 180-degree turn here, we look at the far end and we see the Washington Monument. This is the memorial for Washington, D.C.'s war dead. The next stop is the Korean War Memorial. I was really impressed with this memorial. If you notice that there's little trenches and concrete and stuff between the soldiers along with the bushes, and that's supposed to represent the struggles that the individual soldier went through as they were climbing mountains or hills or in their struggles fighting in the weather and cold of the Korean War. Along The other side, this is to the right side of the walkway. To the left side of the walkway is a large granite wall that is similar to the Vietnam Memorial, except instead of names, it is covered with faces. And from a distance, it is hard to see the faces, but when you walk up the way that they are printed on the wall, as you walk up to the wall, you can see that they're very detailed, and they represent like individual soldiers and airmen and Marines and Coast Guardmen all through there. I filmed. You could film 20 minutes of just the faces there. It was impactful. Then at the end of the Korean War Memorial, it has a list of the number of people killed, the number of people missing, the number of people that were prisoner of war, the number of people that were wounded, and then a final note reminding everybody that freedom is not free. We then walked over to the title place, and here's the Martin Luther King Memorial, the Franklin Delano Roosevelt FDR Memorial, along with Eleanor Roosevelt. We then walked a short distance to the Jefferson Memorial. This is a Jefferson Memorial from the FDR Memorial. They're doing construction on it. There was a large Korean protest outside the Jefferson Memorial while we were there. There's Thomas Jefferson in the center of the memorial, the rotunda dome above it, many quotes from Thomas Jefferson along the walls. Then we come out, we pan out. We're going to come out and see the Washington Monument, along with Korean protesters. I was really excited to go to the Air and Space Museum, but as you see, 7 of the 8 galleries were closed for inspection. We have a V1 Vengeance weapon, a V2, the Spirit of St. Louis, X1, and an Airacobra. Our final stop was at the Holocaust Museum. It's amazing the terrible things that man can do to each other. A train here that they would stick 100 Jews in and transport. The actual cobblestones from the Warsaw Ghetto were transported, and you can walk on them while you're at the museum. Bunks from a concentration camp, along with tattooed arms with serial numbers. They had I Like Heroes, and they had a whole rings for heroes or people that stood up to the Nazis to save Jews, sometimes at the sake of their own lives. There's a whole wall donated to heroes here, and I picked out a couple here, including Oskar Schindler from Schindler's List. And then we'll end our trip with a very common saying, but it's very true.